Her Fitbit was 3,000 steps ahead of schedule. That's how it started. Just a flash on her wrist when she reached across the dinner table to pour herself more wine, talking about how exhausted she was from the marketing strategy workshop at work. She didn't notice me noticing, but I did. She was 3,000 steps ahead, and we'd barely left the house all day. Now, that might sound petty, even paranoid, but when your wife suddenly starts wearing lace underwear under a hoodie and sweatpants to lounging days, and her perfume lingers stronger in the house than it ever did on your skin, you start paying attention to the small things. Her phone was never upside down before when we ate. Now it was practically superglued screen down to the table. She started putting her hair up when she got home. A tell I learned early in our marriage meant she was done being present, mentally clocked out, phone in hand, locked away in some digital escape room I wasn't invited to. It didn't take much for the picture to form. Her libido had withered at home but bloomed somewhere else, yet she still performed just enough affection to keep my radar sedated. The fake peck on the cheek before bed. The forced chuckle when I told her about a new project at work. The groceries she suddenly forgot we needed. That week, I found the real first break. The toothpaste cap was left off. Not twisted loosely, not askew. Just completely off. Paste drying in a crusty mess on the sink. My wife was meticulous, OCD about these things. She once threw out my old electric toothbrush because the grip had toothpaste stains on it. That kind of woman does not leave a tube open unless she's distracted, or shaken, or in a rush to wipe something else off her lips. I didn't accuse. I didn't scream. I simply bought a new toothbrush, placed it beside hers, and said nothing. That was the moment I stepped out of the role of husband and into the role of strategist. I took mental snapshots of her new habits, the late showers with the bathroom door locked, the random yoga classes that left her glowing and out of breath, but with no mat and no gym bag. Her underwear drawer evolved too. Colors and fabrics she never wore for me, now freshly laundered and perfumed, as if she were curating a museum of lies just beneath our bedroom floorboards. She still called me babe, but there was a pause in her tone, like a singer forgetting the next line. Her skin started tasting different, not metaphorically, literally. A faint citrus I never bought, a lotion I didn't recognize, masked over sweat that didn't smell like her stress, but someone else's satisfaction. She once laughed too hard at a text notification, then clumsily tried to hide it by faking a sneeze. That's when I knew I wasn't living with my wife anymore. I was housing a woman rehearsing her exit, telling herself every day that she was the victim of a loveless marriage, of a man who just didn't get her. She was building a narrative in her head, a pity-fueled fairy tale where she was Juliet and I was the tower keeping her from love. And that was fine, because I had a narrative of my own, one that ended with her alone, broke, and begging for a second chance at a life I would have already erased her from. But first, I had to let her walk into her own trap. Because when a woman cheats, she wants to feel like the decision was hers, empowered, self-righteous. I wasn't going to take that from her. I was going to let her believe it, savor it, crown herself with it, while I built the cage around her feet, step by step, smile by smile. She had no idea I'd already ordered the locks. It was almost poetic, the way things looked so normal from the outside, like one of those pristine snow globes, shaken just enough to make everything swirl, but never hard enough to crack the glass. We still had breakfast together on Sundays. She still laughed at my jokes, though the laugh came a half-second too late, like a dubbed movie with bad syncing. I still came home to the smell of dinner, the occasional kiss on the cheek, the sound of her humming softly as she folded laundry. But there was something in her eyes that had turned, like she was watching a movie I wasn't in. At first I told myself it was stress. She'd started taking those online courses in digital branding and emotional intelligence, and suddenly our evenings turned into TED Talk marathons on personal evolution. I was proud of her. I told her that, encouraged her to follow what sparked her interest. But somewhere in those self-improvement rabbit holes, she started building a life that no longer included me. Not with hostility. No, she was never cruel, never loud. Just vacant. She started staying up late, but not with me. Not for movies, or wine, or even quiet company. Just her laptop, glowing against her face while I lay in bed alone, listening to her click through YouTube videos and whispering Zoom calls I was never told about. She said she was in a mastermind group for entrepreneurs. That was the first time she used the word boundaries. Said she needed time alone after the calls to decompress. I respected that. I backed off, gave her space. I wanted to be the supportive husband. I didn't want to be the villain in whatever growth narrative she was crafting for herself. But the space kept growing. Her hugs got shorter. Her eyes stopped locking with mine. She started journaling obsessively, whole notebooks filled with looping handwriting that she'd slammed shut when I walked into the room. Once, I saw a line before she closed it. Today I remembered who I was before him. I wanted to ask what that meant. Instead, I kissed her forehead and told her I loved her. She smiled and said, "Thank you." Not "I love you too." Just "thank you." Her phone started living face down. Notifications silenced. Password changed. She said she was detoxing from digital chaos. But one night I passed by her car and noticed a gym bag in the back seat. We hadn't had a gym membership in over a year. I opened the bag. Inside was a towel, 2 bottles of water, and a receipt for a juice bar clear across town, timestamped during the exact hour she said she was at her friend Maggie's for a deep emotional processing night. I closed the bag. Didn't say a word. I didn't want to believe it. Maybe she was just trying to reclaim her independence, right? Women need space too. That's what all the articles said. But space from what? I was the one who cooked on Fridays, who did the taxes, who asked about her day. I was the one who kept the house running while she reinvented herself with Pinterest boards and morning meditations. She started dressing differently too, looser at home, tighter when she left. I said nothing. Just watched. Took mental notes. The wine we used to share at dinner, she now drank alone on the couch. Her Instagram, once filled with couple photos, was now suddenly private. I only noticed when I tried to tag her in a photo of us at the lake, and it wouldn't let me. She said it was to protect her mental space from external opinions. I believed her. Or rather, I wanted to. Because even as the truth started pushing its claws under my skin, I wasn't ready to rip the illusion open. We still had moments, brief echoes of the life we built. A shared laugh. A lazy Sunday on the couch. Her hand still found mine under the table sometimes. But it felt like someone else's hand, borrowed warmth from a body that had already left me in spirit. I told myself this was a phase. A storm we'd weather. I reminded myself that marriages go through cycles. That maybe, just maybe, she was lost and I needed to help guide her back. But deep down, I could feel it. Like a leak in the hull of a ship. You don't notice it at first, but you start sinking long before the water ever reaches your knees. She was still there. Still smiling. Still saying, "I'm just tired, and I just need to focus on myself right now." But her smile didn't crinkle her eyes anymore. Her joy wasn't directed at me. And I, still loyal, still hopeful, still trying, sat beside her every night, pretending I didn't feel the quiet devastation radiating from the other end of the couch. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the last thread snapped, not with a bang, but with a barely audible ping, like the sound of a watch spring breaking beneath silk, quiet, delicate, final. She was working from home, or so she said. I'd come home early under the pretense of a canceled meeting, walked through the front door, and was greeted by silence instead of the usual tapping of her keyboard or the droning voice of her Zoom calls. Her car was in the driveway. Her coat was hung on the rack. But the office door, always cracked open before, was now shut, and the faintest whisper of a man's voice drifted through the wood. Not loud. Just low, intimate, like a secret being unwrapped slowly. I didn't press my ear to the door. I didn't knock. I didn't need to. I simply stood there, heartbeat steady, watching the way the light leaked from underneath the threshold, flickering ever so slightly, the way it does when someone's pacing while speaking softly on a call. Then her laugh came short, breathy, different. I hadn't heard that laugh in months. Not from her. Not from me. I backed away quietly, turned, walked to the kitchen, made coffee, stirred it, stared into the swirl of cream like it might spell out a message I already knew. She came out 20 minutes later, surprised but composed, said, "Oh, I thought you were in a meeting all day," and kissed me on the cheek. The scent hit me instantly, not her usual perfume, but cologne. Men's cologne. Subtle, but foreign, clinging to the neckline of her blouse like a signature. I didn't flinch. I didn't confront. I sipped my coffee and said, "Meeting ended early. You were on a call." She smiled too quickly, blinked too slow. "Just catching up with Maggie." She always used Maggie. Maggie was her safety word. I nodded, smiled back. Later that evening, I checked the router logs. Something she forgot about in her tech-savvy reinvention. A little tool that logged every device and its activity on our Wi-Fi. There it was, an unfamiliar MacBook connected for 3 hours that afternoon, labeled as MB Kevin P. The name meant nothing to me, but I screenshotted it anyway. Next, I checked the mirror. She'd left her phone charging in the bathroom, careless, sloppy. I didn't touch it. Just looked at the reflection in the mirror when it lit up with a message preview. Last night was dangerous and perfect. Same time Thursday. The sender was just a number, not a name. No emojis. That was the part that struck me. Not passion strategy. They weren't just screwing. They were coordinating. My hands didn't shake. My breath didn't change. My heart slowed, if anything. I flushed the toilet to cover the time I lingered, stepped out, and found her pretending to read a self-help book on the couch. She smiled again. I think part of her already knew I knew. And I think she liked it. Like a child testing how much fire they can play with before the burn comes. That night, she kissed me in bed. Not out of affection. Out of guilt. Out of fear. Maybe even out of dominance. And I let her. I let her believe I still bought into the fantasy, that I was still blind, still soft, still hers. But in my head, something snapped into place. A quiet switch flipped. This wasn't about love anymore. This wasn't about betrayal. This was about power. About control. And I realized I had none, not yet. She was orchestrating her exit, piece by piece, behind a mask of enlightenment and emotional exploration. But what she didn't realize, what she couldn't possibly know, was that I wasn't angry. I wasn't broken. I was becoming something else. Someone precise. Someone calculating. From that moment on, every word I spoke was rehearsed. Every action was planned. Every smile was a camouflage. She thought she was rewriting her story, escaping from the shadow of a man too dull to matter. But I was no longer in the story. I was the author now, and I had just started the outline for her final chapter. She had no idea that every step she took was now being recorded, not through spyware, not through some Hollywood surveillance fantasy, but through the oldest tools known to man: observation, patience, and pattern recognition. I started small, subtle, calculated. A question here, a comment there. How was Maggie's? I'd ask, noting the way she blinked too long before answering, the pause where a lie had to be stitched together. Did you like the Thai place again? I'd say, even though her car's GPS history, pulled from a service login she forgot I still had access to, showed her parked behind a nondescript apartment complex on 3rd Street during that exact dinner window. She laughed it off, said, "Yeah, same pad Thai," and I just nodded, noting that she'd parked there twice in the last 2 weeks, always around 7 p.m., never for more than 2 hours. I didn't confront her. I complimented her, fed her comfort, let her believe she was still in control. But every time she fed me a lie, I logged it like an accountant tracking fraud. I created a new email account under a fake name, nothing dramatic, just a basic profile with a few vague photos of a decent-looking guy I found through stock imagery and reverse image searches. Then I had this fictional man message her on a platform she never thought I knew she used, an old forum-turned-dating site she claimed was just for networking. Within 3 days, she responded. Within 5, she was flirting. And on day 7, she asked Ben if he ever went to that same juice bar her gym bag receipt had come from. When she typed, "It's my favorite place after yoga," I smiled, not because I was amused, but because it confirmed what I suspected. The yoga was never yoga. The gym bag was a costume, and she was the lead in a play I wasn't cast in. I stopped tracking her directly. Instead, I started watching her best friend, Maggie, the emotional alibi she always leaned on. Maggie's social media wasn't locked down, and she liked to post. A lot. Pictures of cocktails, brunches, nail appointments. I cross-referenced timestamps with my wife's locations. One Saturday, my wife said she was helping Maggie through a rough patch and would be out late. Maggie, meanwhile, posted 4 back-to-back Instagram stories from a wine tour out of town. My wife's car never left the city. That night, I planted a trail. Left a note in her purse with one word: 3rd Street. Just a slip of paper. Nothing else. She found it the next morning, and I watched her face drain like blood from a corpse. She didn't say anything. Neither did I. But she was off balance all day, checking her phone more often, double-locking her screen, asking strange, open-ended questions like, "Do you trust me?" as if trying to assess whether I was playing dumb or simply too dull to connect the dots. I kept playing dumb, but my traps got sharper. I started requesting small favors at times I knew she'd claim to be busy. "Can you send me a photo of the receipt if you grab gas tonight?" I'd text, knowing her car hadn't moved. "Let me know if you're still with Maggie. I want to send her that chili recipe she liked." Lies stacked on lies, and I watched her build a crooked house with them, all while smiling, kissing me goodbye, and repeating phrases from motivational podcasts like, "I'm finally becoming who I was meant to be." I let her believe that. Let her feel evolved. Meanwhile, I started gathering financial data, our joint accounts, the credit card we shared, even the old Venmo logs. Found transfers to names I didn't recognize, payment requests labeled late night snack wine glass or car detail. One name kept showing up, Kevin P. The same as the MacBook. The same cologne, I assumed. I didn't confront her. I offered to upgrade our joint bank card to track spending better. She smiled, said she loved that I was so responsible. I adjusted the limits quietly. Set alerts. Filed everything. She didn't know that while she was texting him from the couch, I had a burner phone in my office receiving every alert from our joint card, every GPS ping from her car. And then, the masterstroke. I booked a fake weekend retreat, told her my company was sending me to a leadership summit in Denver. She lit up inside. Tried to hide it, but I saw it. That flicker of excitement, of opportunity. I left Friday morning. Watched her from the corner of our street as she drove off in the opposite direction 2 hours later. I had set up cameras, discreet, motion-triggered, hidden in objects only I used. I watched in real time as she brought him into my house. My kitchen, my living room, my bed. And I watched it all without blinking. Not because it didn't hurt, but because I was done feeling. She thought she was writing her liberation story, page by page. But I was just sharpening the knife behind the curtain, preparing for the final act. She was already in the cage. I just hadn't closed the door yet. I chose the charity gala because I knew she'd never see it coming, our annual appearance, the one night a year she cared more about public image than her own reflection. She wore that emerald green dress she always saved for impact, the one that turned heads and made her feel untouchable. I wore the navy suit she once said made me look like a senator, calm and controlled. We were the picture of elegance, her arm in mine, smiles offered like champagne flutes, her laughter timed perfectly to my dry wit. She thought we were back in sync, that whatever tension had haunted the last month was fading, that my leadership summit had rekindled my focus. What she didn't know was that this was the summit. I had reserved the slideshow presentation slot, under the guise of promoting our company's charitable partnership, and she had even helped me prepare it, never questioning the encrypted USB I kept in my inner jacket pocket. Midway through the evening, after the speeches, I took the stage. The lights dimmed. The crowd hushed. I smiled, thanked the hosts, then clicked the remote. The first slide showed our foundation's logo. The second showed her, laughing, wrapped in Kevin's arms, blurry in motion but unmistakable. A pause rippled through the room like a held breath. Then the video began. No sound. Just 3 minutes of footage, her opening our front door to him, the kiss in our hallway, the way she yanked him by the tie into our bedroom. I stood calmly beside the screen, facing the audience, then turned to her. The crowd turned too. She stood frozen, wine glass trembling, knuckles white. I said nothing, just stared. Her lips parted, eyes wide, and the first lie came out like a reflex. Wait, that's old. It's not what you think. She stepped forward, glancing at the people now whispering around her. We were just talking. That's not. He came over to help me with something. Her voice cracked. The justification phase. It was a mistake, okay? One time. That's all. I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't know how to tell you. I watched her, unblinking. She started pacing. Desperation crept into her voice like a fever. You were never home. You always made me feel invisible. You stopped listening. You made me feel like a burden. The blame. I let her spiral. Let her crumble publicly. Let her realize she was alone in a room full of polished masks and hungry eyes. Then came the sneer, the final wall of defense. You know what? Maybe I did what I had to do. Maybe I was tired of being married to a robot. At least he made me feel something. Her voice gained force, but her hand shook. You think this makes you powerful? Embarrassing me like this. The mockery. But then I spoke, softly, no anger, just surgical precision. I know everything. From the gym bag, to the fake spa visits, to the burner account you flirted with. You told him you loved the thrill, that you felt alive lying to me. Her breath hitched. I stepped closer, just enough for her to feel my calm. You brought him into our home, into our bed, and still smiled at me with that mouth. She shrank. Eyes darted. Sweat bloomed along her collarbone. Every receipt, every message, every excuse, I let you give them to me. I wanted to see how far you'd go. Her voice finally broke. Please, not here. she whispered, tears beginning to well. We can talk about this. We can fix it. The fear. I leaned in, just enough for only her to hear the next sentence. You already signed the postnup last month. Remember the estate update? You gave up everything the second you handed me that pen. Her face drained of all color. You wanted freedom, I continued, eyes locked on hers, and I gave it to you. Fully. Completely. With nothing tethering you to the life you destroyed. She tried to speak. Couldn't. Just trembled as the crowd politely averted their eyes, pretending not to feast on her downfall. The room was silent, heavy with judgment dressed in tuxedos and pearls. She wasn't a woman anymore. She was a story, a whisper that would live in every room she walked into from now on. And I, still silent, still unshaken, just watched. Not out of cruelty, but because the hunter never flinches after the trap closes. The music hadn't resumed. No one moved. And I didn't leave. Not yet. Let her sit in it. Let her rot in that frozen moment where she realized that the man she thought she outsmarted had orchestrated her own unraveling, down to the very breath. She came home hours after the gala like a thundercloud breaking apart, still wrapped in the emerald green dress, now wrinkled and stained at the hem, her heels in her hand, hair falling in chaotic strands as if she'd tried to claw the shame off herself. The door slammed behind her, the echo clinging to the silence I let hang like a noose in the room. I was seated in the same chair I always used, sipping the same whiskey I never finished, watching the door like it owed me something. She didn't speak at first, just stared at me, searching my face for fury, for fire, for anything she could latch onto to restart the game. But there was nothing. No expression, no recognition, just the kind of stillness that made her nervous. So that's it, she finally snapped, her voice already laced with venom. You humiliate me in front of everyone and sit there like a damn statue. I didn't move, didn't blink. You smothered me, she hissed. You sucked the air out of everything. I couldn't breathe in this house without being reminded of how small I felt around you. I stared at her like I was watching someone else speak through her mouth. You were boring. Do you hear me? You were like a ghost. Here, but not here. What was I supposed to do? Wither away while you talked spreadsheets and schedules? I tilted my head slightly, as if listening to a broken radio. She started pacing, her voice climbing, her eyes wild. This wouldn't have happened if you were a real man. If you actually made me feel wanted. Maybe I wouldn't have had to go looking. That one she threw like a dagger. But I didn't flinch. Just set the glass down gently. You didn't go looking, I said calmly. You were already there. Long before I ever stopped reaching. Her breath caught for half a second, just enough for the truth to sting. You think you're so clever, she spat. You think this makes you powerful, tearing us apart like some movie villain. You want to punish me, is that it? You want to feel like a man again. I stood, not in anger, but finality. I didn't tear anything, I replied. You lit the match and kept dancing in the fire. I just moved the furniture before the house collapsed. Her lip trembled, her hands clenched. You're heartless. I nodded slowly. No, I just ran out of reasons to lie to myself. She laughed thin, high-pitched, and brittle, the sound of a drowning woman pretending to swim. You'll regret this, she hissed. You'll wake up alone, and no one will ever love you like I did. I stepped closer, not to intimidate, just to show her how far she'd fallen. You're right, I said. No one will ever love me the way you did. With conditions. With knives. With silence soaked in lies. Her mouth opened, but no words came. She looked around like the walls might save her, like the house she poisoned could suddenly cradle her again. You think you're so above it all, she muttered, quieter now. But you're just as broken as me. You just hide it better. I leaned in, just enough to let my voice cut through the last threads of her defense. The difference is, I didn't pretend to be someone else while I broke. You wore a mask and called it growth. Her knees almost buckled. She caught herself on the kitchen island, knuckles white. You're not even angry, she whispered. Why aren't you angry? I looked her in the eyes, and for the first time, she saw what real distance looked like. Because you don't matter enough anymore to stir that kind of emotion. That was the knife. The one she couldn't rip out or twist back. The silence that followed was thicker than rage, heavier than any insult she'd thrown. She looked at me, really looked, and saw the absence. The void where love had been. The place she used to occupy. And she panicked. Not because she wanted me back, but because she finally realized the power was gone. Not taken, given up, one lie at a time. Please, she said suddenly, voice cracking. Can we just talk? Just for a second? Without all that, no, I said, cutting through her final plea. You talked enough when you thought I wasn't listening. I walked past her, toward the bedroom, not to slam a door, but to remind her that silence now lived where our marriage used to. And the worst part? She knew she couldn't follow. Not anymore. She still slept under my roof for another 11 days after the gala, walking around the house like a prisoner on parole, thinking that silence meant hope, that my restraint was a sign of emotional conflict instead of cold execution. She tried to cook once, halfway through the week. I let her. Took a bite. Said thanks without meeting her eyes. She kept trying to initiate conversations, throwing out nostalgic fragments. Remember our trip to Charleston? I heard that song you love on the radio, testing the waters for cracks in my resolve. But I wasn't there anymore. My body moved through the routines, but my mind was in a war room, running calculations. Revenge, for me, wasn't an outburst. It was a chessboard. Every night while she slept in the guest room, I built the architecture of her collapse. First came the legal groundwork. I'd had her sign a postnup 6 months ago, under the pretense of updating our estate plan after a financial planning seminar I claimed to attend. She skimmed it, trusted me, signed without asking questions. It gave me full claim over our primary residence, exempted me from alimony if infidelity was proven, and locked her out of any stake in the business I'd built from scratch. My attorney, a quiet, meticulous man I met through a referral known for precision, not compassion, filed everything in sequence. Divorce papers, financial partition, a petition to freeze accounts pending arbitration. Custody would have been part of it if we had children. We didn't. Thank God. Next came the finances. I logged into our joint bank account, drained it legally into a trust one controlled exclusively, fully authorized under the new legal agreement she'd blindly co-signed. I closed the credit card she used. Left one open in her name, just enough rope. I reclaimed the car she drove, technically registered to my company, not to her. I had it picked up during her therapy appointment she scheduled one afternoon. She came out of the building to an empty parking space and a tow notice from corporate services. She called me. I didn't answer. She texted, "Where's my car?" I replied, "Wasn't yours." The next day, I notified the utility providers, transferred everything to my name, then began the digital purge. I changed passwords on every shared platform, deleted her profiles from streaming services, cloud storage, even our shared calendar. She tried to reset a few. I'd already rerouted the recovery emails. She asked, "Did you change the Netflix?" I said, "No, I upgraded it." Let her sit with that. Then came the social layer. I prepared a simple, polite message, no venom, no slander, addressed to her parents, her siblings, and her closest friends. It read, "I wanted you to hear it from me. We're getting divorced. She was unfaithful, and I have all the proof. I won't be discussing this further, but I thought you deserved to know the truth." I sent it out at 9 a.m. on a Monday, just as they were starting their week. Her father responded 5 minutes later, "I'm so sorry. If you ever need anything, call me." Her mother never replied. Her sister unfollowed her on Instagram within the hour. Then, the final layer, professional. I knew where she worked. I knew her company had a strict moral conduct clause tied to brand partnerships, especially for their marketing team. She was already on thin ice for misuse of remote work privileges. I'd seen the HR warning in her inbox once when I passed by her laptop. So I forwarded a single video still, her on our couch, tangled with Kevin, timestamped during work hours. No context, just the image. Sent anonymously. Her manager responded the same day. I heard her on the phone later that night, panicked, trying to talk her way out of a review meeting scheduled for Friday. She said things like misunderstanding, edited footage, private life. I poured myself another whiskey and listened like it was jazz. By the time the weekend came, her world had shrunk to silence. No calls. No texts. Her phone stopped buzzing. Her eyes had lost that edge, replaced now by a flicker of fear every time I entered a room. She tried to talk again that Sunday. Sat across from me at the kitchen table and whispered, "Can we please just start over?" I looked up, dead calm, and said, "Start over where? Your apartment? Your new job? Your family's guest list?" She didn't respond. Just stared, finally understanding the difference between losing a husband and being completely erased by him. She thought she had time. She thought I was just hurt. But she never saw the wires tightening behind the scenes. She never realized the moment she crossed the line, I stopped being her husband and became her consequence. It happened at her sister's engagement party, of all places, an elegant evening garden affair, complete with string lights, a jazz quartet, and a photographer hired to capture every special moment. She insisted we attend together, a desperate play to project unity, to pretend the gala was an outlier and not a fatal fracture. I agreed, with a soft smile and a pressed suit, knowing full well what waited behind the hors d'oeuvres and family toasts. The guest list was carefully selected. Her parents, her siblings, her cousins, old college friends, co-workers, and a few mutual acquaintances who always played both sides, until now. As we stepped into the venue, hand in hand, I could feel her grip tighten, nervous but trying to play it cool. The whispers started almost immediately, quiet at first, like ripples in still water. I watched her smile crack just slightly as her cousin turned away mid-greeting, suddenly busy with a plate of cheese. Her best friend Sarah, once glued to her side, now stood with me during cocktail hour, asking how I was holding up, placing her hand on my arm like I was the one worth protecting. My wife's eyes locked on us from across the lawn, confusion darkening to suspicion, then dread. She approached, forced a laugh, said, "Sarah, you didn't tell me you and he were such good friends now." Sarah just looked at her and said, "I finally know who the good person was all along," and walked away. My wife blinked hard, her jaw tensing, and turned back to me with a brittle chuckle, but I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. I was already everywhere. My silence echoed louder than anything she could fake. Then came the speeches. Her father stood and toasted the bride-to-be, giving a beautiful monologue about loyalty, about honoring commitments. And then, with a subtle glance toward us, he added, "Some people think betrayal is about a moment. It's not. It's about choices made in silence, and the lies we tell to protect what should never have existed." The room froze. Her hand shot toward her wine glass, knocking it slightly. People stared. No one smiled. She looked around like a deer catching scent of a trap it's already standing in. Then the slideshow began, a simple, looping video of family memories. Vacations. Birthdays. Reunions. But between those, deliberately inserted with surgical precision, were still frames. Her messages to Kevin. The GPS logs. Her kissing him in the hallway of our home, her blouse half unbuttoned, his hand tangled in her hair. The images didn't linger, just flickered quickly enough for people to see but not immediately comprehend. It wasn't overt, it was surgical. Strategic. Her sister gasped. Her mother whispered something and walked off in tears. Her father never turned to look at her again. Her lover, Kevin, who she thought might be her escape, sent her a text on screen in real time, connected via a synced tablet I'd left open in the guest gift table, mirroring their old chat thread for everyone to see. "Don't contact me again. This is insane." She lunged for it, hands trembling, but it was too late. Phones were out. Screenshots were flying. Her world collapsed in 4K, projected against a white sheet strung up for celebration but now bearing witness to her unraveling. Still, she tried to save face. "This is a mistake. This is manipulated. He's doing this to hurt me." Her voice cracked as she turned in a circle, eyes wild, begging for someone, anyone, to stand with her. No one moved. One cousin took a step back. Even the photographer lowered his camera. And I stood at the edge of the garden, hands clasped in front of me, still as a statue. She found my eyes. And for a moment, she looked like the woman I married, lost, terrified, begging. "Please," she mouthed. No sound, just breath. I didn't flinch. I didn't blink. I didn't move. Because I didn't need to. She wasn't crying because she lost me. She was breaking because I was still standing. Still there. Watching. And she knew. This wasn't a man undone. This was a man who had already won. It erupted 2 days after the engagement party, at a family dinner that she demanded we attend, some desperate attempt to reclaim normalcy, to show her parents she still had control over the narrative. Her mother had called ahead to ask if it was a good idea. I said, "Let her try." So we arrived, her faking confidence with a pasted-on smile, me calm, unreadable. The table was full, her parents, her sister and fiancé, 2 co-workers she invited for support, and my younger brother, who had seen enough of the story to understand the storm that was about to hit. Dinner started awkwardly, forks clinking, glasses raised half-heartedly, no one quite knowing whether to speak to her, to me, or just to their plates. Then she broke the silence with a glass tap. "I just want to say," she began, voice trembling slightly but laced with rehearsed warmth, "that I know the last few weeks have been intense. But we're working through it. And I hope—" "No," I said, loudly enough to stop every fork mid-air. Her eyes darted to me, panic flickering behind a manufactured smile. We're not working through anything, I continued. You're just still pretending there's something left to save. Gasps. Her father coughed awkwardly. Her mother shifted in her seat. Don't do this, she whispered across the table, but I leaned in. You want truth in front of your friends? Your coworkers. I gestured to them. Great. Let's talk about truth. I pulled out my phone, held up a screenshot. This is you. Last month. Texting Kevin about how you can't wait to taste him again in the house your husband paid for. Chairs scraped. Her sister stood halfway, hand over her mouth. The fiancé looked away. One of her coworkers dropped his fork. You don't understand, she began, but I cut her off. No, they do understand. They just never thought you'd be this disgusting. She stood now, voice rising, eyes wild. You're humiliating me. You humiliated yourself, I snapped back. You took what we built and gutted it because you wanted to feel young again. You destroyed your name. I just gave it back to you, publicly. She screamed then. You were cold. You were never there for me emotionally. You think being a good provider makes you a good husband. Her voice cracked, high and shrill, echoing off the walls. I needed more than spreadsheets and grocery lists. I needed connection. Her coworkers stood to intervene. Maybe this isn't the place, sit down, I said, not even looking at him. He did. She turned to her father, desperate. Dad, please, he's twisting everything. Her father didn't move. Her mother stared at her like she'd never seen her before. I made one mistake, she shrieked. One mistake, and you want to burn my whole life down? I laughed once, dry and sharp. You didn't make a mistake. You made a campaign. You lied, gaslit, and betrayed repeatedly. You didn't just cross a line. You paved a road and invited him to dance on it. She threw her wine glass. It shattered near the floor. The room exploded into motion. Her sister tried to hold her back. My brother stood in front of me instinctively. People were filming now. One coworker whispered, "This is insane," while the other quietly edged toward the exit. You think you're so perfect, she hissed through tears. You think this makes you a hero? You're a manipulative, heartless shell who always needed control more than love. I stepped closer. My voice dropped. If I needed control, I would have crushed you silently. But I let you speak. I let you lie. I let you dig your own grave, and now you're furious because everyone sees you standing in it. She sobbed then, mascara streaked, hands shaking, shoes off, hair matted against her forehead. Please, she whispered, voice broken now. We were supposed to be forever. I looked at her, really looked, and felt nothing. Forever ended the moment you let him inside our home, I said. The moment you moaned his name on our sheets, you killed forever. This, I gestured to the chaos, is just the funeral. Silence fell, thick and final. No one spoke. No one moved. Just the sound of her weeping, shattered in front of everyone she thought she could fool. I walked out, slow, deliberate, without a raised voice or a backward glance, knowing that she would never recover from being seen, truly seen, for what she really was, and that I would never need to say another word. In the months that followed, her life crumbled with a grace so slow and brutal it could have been mistaken for theater, if not for the silence that followed every scene. Her company terminated her within the week under a morality clause, citing irreparable reputational damage. Word spread like oil on water, colleagues distanced themselves overnight, group chats emptied, LinkedIn endorsements vanished. She deleted her social media within days, but not before screenshots circled through every corner of our community. Her network dried up faster than her excuses. Friends she once confided in stopped responding to texts. Maggie blocked her. Sarah posted a cryptic quote about snakes losing their skin and never naming names. But everyone knew. Her family didn't come to her defense. Her father, once her protector, returned the wedding photos she had given them in a silent box. Her sister removed her from the bridal party. Her own mother, humiliated by what she'd seen on that garden projector, asked her to take time away from the family for a while, indefinitely. Even Kevin, the man she shattered our life for, disappeared the second the world saw them for what they were. No goodbye, no confrontation, just silence and a deactivated number. She moved 2 towns over, into a 1-bedroom above a pawn shop, where she took a job at a marketing firm that didn't ask questions and didn't offer benefits. She drove an old used hatchback I saw listed online, manual windows, dent in the rear bumper, no history available. I only knew about it because she emailed me once, asking if I still had the insurance paperwork. I didn't respond. She sent letters after that. Typed, neat, desperate. Apologies layered in poetic phrasing. I was lost. I made a terrible mistake. I still think of you every day. They grew shorter over time. The last one just said, I still love you. I never wrote back. But the moment that sealed her fate forever came on a rainy Thursday, exactly 9 months after the divorce finalized. She showed up at my door, soaked, mascara bleeding, voice shaking as she said, I had nowhere else to go. Please. Just 5 minutes. I didn't move. Didn't open the door wide. Just stood there, watching the ghost of the woman I used to know, now broken, smaller, hollowed out by the consequences she once thought she could outrun. I thought I needed more, she whispered, eyes full of tears. But I just destroyed everything good I ever had. I thought you didn't care, but now I see you were the only one who ever truly did. Please. Talk to me. I studied her face, searching for some trace of what I once loved. There was nothing. Just the cold wreckage of who she chose to become. You remember our first anniversary? I asked, finally. Her eyes lit up. Yes, she said quickly. Of course. You made dinner and that photo album and I cut her off. Strange, I said quietly. I don't even remember your name anymore. She gasped, tears spilling, hands reaching toward me, but I stepped back and closed the door. No slam. No noise. Just finality. The kind that doesn't need volume to echo for eternity. And that was it. She stood there for a few seconds. Then she was gone. I never heard from her again. And if I ever do, I won't reply. Because some ruins are meant to stay buried. Thanks for listening to my story. Now tell me, where are you from? And did you enjoy the ride?